Hey, my name is Isaac, funded startup CTO, and I run the checkout team at Pretty Little Thing. Today, I wanted to talk about what to do when you're in a team that aren't using the best practices. It may sound discouraging, but it's probably already too late. You'd be surprised how little people like being told what to do. Also, it's very difficult to be objective anyway, as much as you might think like this is the right or that's the wrong approach. A lot of the time, people are making emotional decisions. I know engineers like to be logical, but they are fundamentally people, and as such, they will be making emotional decisions. Just as a little side note, things you might not have considered of why an engineering manager is picking certain things that you think are a bad choice. It's decisions such as like, how easy is this to hire for? So let's say, the deadline runs on later than you expect, and they need to get contractors in or on board quickly. Like, is it easy to get people at a decent price? Help in the ecosystem, what's the kind of support out there, framework support, and then potential costs of like if they're hosting on whatever service, is it cheaper or more expensive or more complicated with the framework that you're using or what they're suggesting. Before we get into potential solutions, I want to tell an anecdote about a situation I was in. I've had projects that I would consider very over-engineered. The reason I consider it that is because we were doing more infrastructure changes than actual code. The infrastructure lead was basically implementing technologies and frameworks that none of us had really used before. And it's not to say they were bad, it's just no one was really on board with it, and it felt very complicated for the fact that we hadn't even released an MVP yet. It was a bit of a mess. It's not that the approach that he was doing was bad, it's that the amount of engineering that the infrastructure required based on the fact, like I said, no MVP, I thought it was over-engineered, and I was literally blocked like weeks at a time. And then looking back, I'm not actually sure what they were doing was wrong. So in my head, I come from startups, MVPs, it's super essential. You get something working, you get it out, you test it. What they were actually doing is they were building for clients that they already had. So this was kind of like an upselling service, and they needed it to be enterprise scale. From the jump, they knew how big they needed it to be, and that's what they were doing. So what was being built into the infrastructure actually would have facilitated that. If they can release, and when they do, they miss all like the teething problems, the scaling issues, blah, 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 it was the right decision because it worked. The things that make it the right decision is that it worked. That's kind of the end of it. So I say that to say this, you getting on board with what they're doing could make it the right decision. The right decision isn't the one that's the smartest, it's the one that worked. A team that all agrees on one approach does better than two teams with best practices going opposite directions. If you don't want to leave the job, you are morally obligated to make it work. So you either got to change the team's mind or you got to figure out how you can fit in properly. At least that's the way I feel. Otherwise, I personally consider it quite selfish. Not only are you wasting everyone else's time, but your own time as well. So that said, if you do feel like you need to bring some change, how can you go about doing it? The first thing I would suggest is trying to actually understand why they're making the decisions, because you can't actually suggest a counter offer if you're not addressing the things that they're making the decision for. The main things I would suggest is just like ask them, oh, okay, like how come we're doing this? Again, you don't want this to be confrontational because that's not the objective. You are trying to understand. You're not trying to question and manipulate and judo them in to do what you want to do. If you think there's areas that they've overlooked, like try and ask them questions which guide them to there. You can even suggest something that you know is bad so that they will correct you. And in the process of correcting you, they will start thinking and they might adjust from what they originally were doing because now they've spoken about it, they've given more thought. The whole point of this is it's not a clear-cut process. You're literally just prodding for information and seeing what you can get. Again, non-confrontationally, because that's the worst thing you can do. And then if that's not working, what I suggest is actually going to your co-workers and seeing if you can get them all to agree on something. Now, I want to be very clear. The objective of this is not to sow discord. What you're trying to do is validate maybe concerns that you already have. So if you think that the framework may be misplaced on wherever you're hosting it and you speak to another engineer, maybe they've not said it because A, they don't care, or two, they're a bit like nervous, they don't want to put themselves out there, whatever it is. But if this concern is shared by like a lot of the team, then it's reasonable for you to actually bring it up. If half of the team thinks this is a terrible idea and they're constantly pushing away, the best thing you can do is actually surface it and people talk about it. Okay, so you've spoken to your engineering manager, your senior members, you've spoken to the rest of the team to try and get them on board, and you don't really feel like it's moving. After that, what can you do? You can't just get on board. And it doesn't even need to be negative. So, if it's a new technology, fantastic. You get a new thing to learn, goes in your CV, increases your value, everyone wins. If it's an old legacy technology, granted, not as cool, but hey, what are you really losing? You're getting paid to learn. And even then, I think there's a lot of valuable things you can get from older technologies. When I learn history, the most valuable thing to me is understanding what is a constant and what has become a variable. So when we think, oh, this is how lives are supposed to be, this is how humans interact, and you learn 300 years ago, it was completely different, it makes you reconsider. It's like, oh, all these things that I do in my daily life, I don't actually have to do them. They're social constructs. And it's the exact same for coding, you know? You might be using a particular framework that's the trend at the moment and you think this is how things have always been. And you look back at an approach that was 2 years ago and you realize like, oh, it's not the default setting. For example, let's say someone's coding journey was entirely done during when microservices were a thing. They could think monoliths are unnatural, you know, and they go back and it's like, why would anyone use that? And then you realize as you learn, it's like, oh, microservices were deliberately built to solve these kind of problems from that. And understanding that neither of them is necessarily the default, they're approaches that came from something, makes you understand to a higher degree why they were used and where they should be implemented. So, you know, it's not lost. Lastly, it's actually soft skill practice. Like, you learn to put your ego aside, whatever it is that you want to do for the sake of the team, and you have a chance to really just think, okay, sometimes it can even be freeing. You're not always going to get pretty projects. So the muddier it is, the better you actually learn and the more you understand and the more experience you can take along. And guess what? This question will probably come up in an interview at some point. So if you actually have an experience of like, oh, you know what? I just accepted to get on, and you think of functional ways you can help the team, trust me, your value goes up anyway. If you can't do those, like, just get another job. Like, you're wasting everyone's time. It's going to be bad energy in the office. No one's going to like you. I'm not going to like you. You're not going to like yourself. I'm joking. Okay, so in conclusion, fundamentally, it is a situation where your hands tied. Very often this question is asked by interviewers purely to understand from a team point perspective, because that is actually the important thing. It's, can you put your particular nuances and opinions aside for the sake of the team to get a goal done? And like I said, what is the right decision in these cases? It's the thing that works. So if you getting on board makes it work, guess what? It was the right decision. This is my personal experience, but I hope it is of use for someone else out there as well. And hopefully this also helps you answer the interview question when it comes up. Thanks, guys.